It is the third night in a row your bedroom fan has not helped. You know the feeling because it is not a feeling at its edge anymore. It is the center of your whole night. You lie on top of the sheets at 11:30 and the fan is blowing and the air it is moving is 84 degrees Fahrenheit. And all it is doing is pushing that 84-degree air across your skin like a warm hand you cannot shake. You flip the pillow to find the cool side, and it is not cool. You get up at 2 in the morning and go back and lie down, and the fan is still running and the air is still warm and you are still awake. Your wife wakes at 6 looking the same way you feel. The fan ran all night and helped with nothing. Now sit with the cost. A window air conditioner for one bedroom runs $150 to $300, then $40 to $70 a month in electricity every summer you own it. A whole house central unit is $7,000 to $14,000 installed. The average American summer cooling bill is past $180 a month and climbing. 1 in 5 households is already behind. Half the country is choosing between groceries and air conditioning. And here is what I want you to sit with. It is in the corner of your bedroom right now. A fan. The fan is not the problem. The fan works. The problem is that the air it is moving has not been cooled before it reaches you. My name is John Fisher. I am Amish, and I farm in Holmes County, Ohio. My family has farmed through Ohio summers for 4 generations without an air conditioner. Hannah and I use the setup I am about to show you in our own bedroom today. It costs $4 to build and takes 20 minutes, and it turns the fan you already own into something that will actually cool the air coming through it. Here is everything you need to know. Quick word before I go further. My family has used these methods for generations, and there are far more of them than fit in any one video. I put them all into a book at johnfisherbook.com. 93 methods total, and many households following them save up to $5,000 or $7,000 a year on their bills. Links in the description below. Now back to it. The governing idea here, and hold on to it because it explains everything that follows, is this. The fan does not cool air. The fan moves air. The cooling happens somewhere else. What matters is what you put in the path of the moving air. Once you understand that, the rest is plain. You are not modifying the fan. You are giving the air something to pass through on its way to you, something wet, something that pulls heat out of the air the same way your own sweat cools your skin when the breeze hits it. The air you feel afterward is not the same air that left the fan. It went through something on the way. Here is the chemistry, plain. When water evaporates, it does not just disappear. It takes something with it. It takes heat. Specifically, every gram of water that transitions from liquid to vapor pulls about 540 calories of thermal energy out of the air around it. That is not a small number. A wet cloth in front of a moving fan that is evaporating water continuously is pulling heat out of every cubic foot of air passing through it, the way a sponge pulls water out of a puddle. The air on the other side of that cloth is measurably, significantly cooler than the air that went in. This is the same physics that makes a sweating pitcher of lemonade cool the air right around it. The same physics the ancient Persians used in their windcatcher towers. The same physics that makes a day feel tolerable the moment you step under a shade tree with a breeze through it. The chemistry is 4,000 years old. It has not changed. Now let me show you the build. I'm going to go slowly through this because there are 3 places where people make mistakes, and each mistake cuts the cooling in half. The materials are plain. You need a box fan, any standard box fan with a rectangular face. You need a shallow plastic tray or baking pan, something about 2 inches deep and roughly the width of your fan face. You need cotton fabric, an old pillowcase, a cut of old cotton sheeting, a worn bath towel, anything cotton, not synthetic, and you need cold water. If you have ice, use it for the first fill, though it is not required. That is the complete materials list. Most folks watching this already have all of it in the house right now. The build. Set your fan on a table or the floor facing toward where you sleep. Cut your cotton fabric into strips about 4 inches wide and long enough to drape into the tray and stand up above the rim. 3 or 4 strips will do. Set your shallow tray directly in front of the fan, centered, close enough that the fan is pushing air at the tray and not around it. Fill the tray with cold water, about 1.5 inches deep. Soak your cotton strips until they are wet through. Stand them upright in the tray with their bottom ends submerged in the water and the upper portions rising above the rim, loose but not bunched. They should look like a loose row of wet curtains standing in a puddle. The fan blows air across and through those standing wet strips before it reaches the room. The water evaporates. The air cools. That is the whole system. Now the 3 mistakes, because each one matters and each one is common. The first mistake is synthetic fabric. I have had folks tell me they tried this and got nothing, and in almost every case when I ask, it was a polyester strip they used. Polyester does not wick water the way cotton does. It sits on the surface of the water rather than drawing it up through the fibers. The wick action, the slow, steady climbing of water from the tray up through the cloth and into the air where the fan can pull moisture off it, that only happens with natural fiber. Cotton. Old cotton is better than new because the fibers are looser and the wick is stronger. That old pillowcase has been washed 100 times. Use it, not the microfiber towel. The second mistake is the wrong tray depth. I have seen people use a deep mixing bowl, and the strips dangle into a foot of water and droop and get no air movement across them. 2 inches of water. That is all you need. The strips wick from 2 inches just as well as from 12, and a shallower tray keeps the strips standing upright where the fan's air can reach them. A standard 9x13 baking pan works well. A cafeteria tray. A shallow plastic storage lid turned upside down. The depth matters more than the width. The third mistake is the placement, and this is the most important one to understand because it is where the whole mechanism either works or fails completely. My grandfather Daniel used to say, the fan is the lungs and the wet cloth is the mouth. The lungs cannot cool what the mouth did not first breathe through. What he meant is this: the fan must push air through the wet strips, not around them. If the tray sits off to the side of the fan, or if there is a gap between the edge of the fan face and the edge of the tray, the air takes the easy path around the cloth and you get no cooling at all. Center the tray directly in front of the fan face. Push it close. No gap at the edges for air to escape. The air needs a path and the wet cloth needs to be in that path. Think of it as a door the air must pass through, not a wall it can walk around. I want to be honest about what this will and will not do. In Holmes County on a dry July evening, this setup drops the air temperature coming through it by 12 to 18 degrees. On a muggy night at 80% humidity, the drop is 4 to 8 degrees. Still real, still the difference between sleeping and lying awake. The mechanism depends on evaporation, and evaporation depends on the air having room to take on moisture. Humid air has less room. Dry air has more. If you live in the dry west, this works well on the worst nights. Gulf Coast in August, the cooling is modest. Before I get to the 2 refinements, and the second one is the self-wicking reservoir method my grandfather built into his upstairs window that ran all night without a single refill. My family has used these methods for generations. I put all 93 of them into one book at johnfisherbook.com. Many households following them save up to $5,000 or $7,000 a year on their bills. Most folks earn back the $47 in the first month. 7-day money back, no questions. Link in the description. Now, the self-wicking reservoir setup and how to build it in 10 minutes from things you already own. The first refinement is the ice staging, and it is simpler than it sounds. On the nights when the heat is serious and you need the most cooling fast, fill a 1-gallon zip-closed bag with ice cubes and set it inside the tray, directly in the path of the fan, just behind the cotton strips. The fan air passes across the ice before it hits the wet cloth, arriving at the cloth already several degrees cooler than room temperature. The cloth then cools it further through evaporation. The 2 mechanisms stack on each other. Stage 1, the ice drops the incoming air 5 to 8 degrees. Stage 2, the wet cotton drops it another 8 to 12. On the worst nights, when the bedroom will not drop below 85, This two-stage setup can bring the air temperature hitting your face down into the mid to upper 60s, while the room itself is still 84. The ice lasts 45 minutes to an hour, which is usually long enough to fall asleep. After that, the cloth alone carries the cooling through the night. The second refinement is the one my grandfather actually built into the house, and it solves the main limitation of the simple tray setup, which is that the cloth dries out in about 2 hours in a dry room, and you have to wake up to re-wet it or the cooling stops. My grandfather Daniel did not want to wake up at 2 in the morning to pour water on a cloth, so he built a reservoir. I was about 9 years old, sitting on the floor of his upstairs bedroom while he showed it to me. He had taken a small wooden box the size of a cigar box and sealed the inside with lard rubbed into every seam so it held water. He set it on the windowsill, above the height of the fan. He filled it with water. Out of a small notch he had cut in the bottom corner of the box, he ran a strip of cotton flannel down into the tray below. The water in the box fed the tray by gravity through the cloth strip, drip by drip, the way a wick feeds a lamp. The tray never ran dry. He told me you could fill the box before bed, and the tray would still have water in the morning. I asked him who had taught him that, and he said his own father, Jacob, and his father before that. You do not need a wooden box. A plastic cup with a pinhole in the bottom, set on a small shelf, or a stack of books above the level of the tray, with a strip of cotton cloth running from the pinhole down into the water, does exactly the same thing. It drip feeds the tray, keeps the cloth wet, runs all night. The whole gravity reservoir costs nothing if you have a plastic cup and a pin. Once you understand the mechanism, it is obvious. You are not building a machine, you are building a wick. Now I want to say something about who profits from you not knowing this. The fan you already own is the engine. The fan companies made their money when you bought the fan years ago. The air conditioner companies want you to believe you need a compressor, refrigerant, a licensed installer, and a monthly electric bill, because that is where the recurring revenue is. There is no service contract in a baking pan. There is no subscription in an old cotton pillowcase. The simplest, most accessible version of cool air has sat outside the marketing for 80 years, while the industry built itself into a $50 billion annual business. I am not telling you a man sat in a room and planned this. Nobody had to plan it. It simply pays better to sell you an $8,000 central unit and a $170 monthly electric bill than to tell you that a fan, a tray, and an old pillowcase do most of the same job for $4. The towels are in your linen closet. They have always been there. Here is the larger thing worth carrying away from this. The fan in the corner is not the problem, and it never was. The problem is that we stopped asking what to put in front of it. When you understand the mechanism, when you understand that the fan moves air, and the question is only what you put in the air's path, you stop being someone who has to call a company and start being someone who can solve a hot night with materials you already own. That is the line between a house that is yours and a house you are renting from a utility company month by month. The Amish families in Holmes County never crossed that line, not because we are clever, but because we could not afford to forget. There was no air conditioner to fall back on, so the knowledge stayed in the woodwork, in the windowsills, in the cigar box on the sill filled with water. Now you have it too. A home you can keep cool yourself is yours. A home that needs a company to keep it cool is something else. The recap. The core setup. Cotton fabric only, 2 inches of water, tray centered directly in front of the fan with no gap at the edges for air to escape. Synthetic fabric does not wick. Deep bowls drown the strips, and off-center placement wastes the whole thing. The ice staging. A bag of ice behind the wet strips for the first hour of sleep. 2-stage cooling. 12 to 20 degrees total drop on dry nights. The gravity reservoir. A cup with a pinhole above the level of the tray. A cotton wick running down into it. Feeds the tray all night without waking up. Here is what I want you to do. Tonight. Not next weekend. Right now, before bed. Find your box fan, find a shallow tray, a baking pan, a plastic lid, anything about 2 inches deep. Find an old cotton pillowcase or a bath towel. Fill the tray with cold water and add the ice from your freezer if you have it. Cut 3 strips of the cotton cloth 4 inches wide. Soak them through, stand them in the tray with their ends in the water and the tops loose above the rim. Set the tray directly in front of the fan, close and centered, no gap. Turn the fan on low and feel what comes through in 5 minutes. Before you go to sleep, set up a cup with a pinhole above the tray with a cotton wick running down so the tray feeds itself through the night. That is everything. You will feel the difference within 5 minutes, and you will sleep tonight. Tell me in the comments what county and state you are in, because humidity changes this significantly, and I want to hear from both the dry climate folks and the humid ones. Tell me how your first night goes, and if your grandmother had her own version of this, what she called it, how she built hers, what she put in front of the fan. Share that. Those old methods are what I am here to collect. I read every one. Next time, I'm going to show you the old Holmes County way to keep a root cellar cool through August without electricity. The same principle of moving air and water, applied underground where the earth itself does the cooling. It is the natural next step from today. Subscribe so you do not miss it. Until then, wet the cloth, center the tray, turn on the fan you already own, and remember that the knowledge that makes you less dependent on a bill and less reliant on a company has always been there. It was just never mentioned by the people whose business depends on you not knowing it.